and welcome to Harvesting Our Wellbeing as Educators. This is episode 14 and my name is Hugh.
My name is Maura.
So this week, myself and Maura, it's near the end of January now and we're approaching February, going towards spring. And so we were thinking about this. Obviously, a lot has happened over the last few months, and there's been a lot of change, obviously, in education with COVID for students, for teachers, for parents. And it's a lot to process individually for each of us. There's a lot going on. So we were thinking of this week looking at that idea of how am I processing what's happening, and how that is, how that lies with us, that processing in our own aloneness. And we're going to introduce a piece by John O'Donoghue around this area as well. So that's our thing today, about individually a reflection of how we are dealing with all the changes that are happening, good, bad, and indifferent, and processing that for ourselves. So I'm going to invite Maura to lead us into a piece of stillness before we look at that piece. Thanks.
Thank you, Hugh. Thank you. My cousin taught John O'Donoghue, and there's so many of us in the country who lay claim to knowing John O'Donoghue, and Hugh and I have really gotten to know his work in these Zoomcasts in preparation for them. And this beautiful piece, and bear with us, it's a little bit longer than what we would normally share with people. This beautiful piece spoke to both of us about our need for aloneness. Each one of us is alone in the world. It takes great courage to meet the full force of your aloneness. Most of the activity in society is subconsciously designed to quell the voice crying in the wilderness within you. The mystic Thomas à Kempis said that when you go out into the world, you return having lost some of yourself. Until you learn to inhabit your aloneness, the lonely distraction and noise of society will seduce you into false belonging, with which you will only become empty and weary. When you face your aloneness, something begins to happen. Gradually, the sense of bleakness changes into a sense of true belonging. This is a slow and open-ended transition, but it is utterly vital in order to come into rhythm with your own individuality. In a sense, this is the endless task of finding your true home within your life. It is not narcissistic, for as soon as you rest in the house of your own heart, doors and windows begin to open outwards to the world. No longer on the run from your aloneness, your connections with others become real and creative. You no longer need to covertly scrape affirmation from others or from projects outside yourself. This is slow work. It takes years to bring your mind home. Oh, there's a lot in there, Hugh.
There definitely is, Maura. Absolutely, a lot of food for thought. I think just it takes great courage to meet the full force of your aloneness. Very powerful. Being with ourselves with all that is happening takes courage. There's no doubt about it. And that idea of we're constantly being distracted by social media, that word of scraping affirmations and falling out of rhythm with who we actually are. trying to about how society can make us, you know, we expect to be this, or we compare ourselves to someone else, or we judge that, we judge this, and then we forget about who we are, which can sometimes increase anxiety. Like even when we're listening to the radio at the moment, if we're constantly listening to radio and television, and we hear the news around the vaccine, is it coming or not, or schools and leaving cert, is the leaving cert going to be on traditional form or not, and you can get lost in that. And I think if I'm lost in that and I'm going online then to teach a class, it's not going to help the class. So the more at home I am within myself and at rhythm I am with myself, and taking that time in stillness, because in stillness it speaks its own language. There's a language that arises, you know, from within myself, and I suppose it's sometimes that may not be, it can be uncomfortable, but I think it's a learning process to stay with it, you know. And that's that idea David White talks about in his poetry, about the sweet confinement of your own aloneness, the sweet confinement of your own aloneness, just being with ourselves, making time for quiet, you know, and processing what's happening, to do with, you know, just a myriad of areas in education and in our world, and just processing that, taking time for ourselves, because everyone can tell us, but how am I with this, and staying with that. And I think out of that there can come some sort of catharsis, maybe a sense, it can take time, but a sense of ease instead of the dis-ease that sometimes the world and comparisons and judgments can create. I think creating a sense of ease. And I think John O'Donoghue there, you know, about false belonging, you know, the false belonging of so many things, trying to be this and trying to be that, where the true belonging is within ourselves. And if we as educators can communicate that in our being, to our students and with each other, well, that sense of reflection is something that we'll have. It's a lifelong skill, you know. So yeah, there's a lot that's coming up in my head from all this. But what would you be thinking, Maura, on it?
I saw Beckett's Happy Days last night, and it's a 2-hour play, and Landmark Productions did it. It was a wonderful production, but sort of halfway through the second hour, I thought, I cannot take this woman's pain. It's a crippling, it's a story of a crippling fracture in this woman's life because of loneliness. And I suppose it made me, what it did was it made me think about how best to be in the world. And I know when I drop into stillness, it just centers me. It does what John O'Donoghue says. It brings my mind home. It brings my body home. It just reminds me that all will be well, all is well. Not will be, just all is well. And but I suppose sometimes I struggle with the consistency of it. And as an educator, it's all about consistency. And we can develop the key skill of coming home to ourselves, but it's not just about developing it, it's about practicing it. And it's all about turning up to myself and being alone. So honest to goodness, John O'Donoghue is wonderful. He just, I think by stepping away himself, he opened his own doors by finding his own aloneness. And what does David White say? The caged, what's it?
So it's the entering the sweet confinement of your own aloneness. The sweet confinement of your own aloneness, yeah.
Yeah, and it's an irony. I mean, it's a confinement in the sense that it's around a discipline, and it's around simply turning up regularly, consistently. But being in one's own aloneness and being settled into it is about opening ourselves up to nature then, because we're all creatures, and we then can be as creative as you need to be because we're connected. So yeah. It's a journey. It's a journey, and it's beautiful. Hugh, let's drop into another maybe just moment of stillness to take all that in that we've shared, and then will you read it again first?
Yeah.
To bring us conclusion? Thank you.
Thank you, Moira. But just lastly, I was thinking that there is a vulnerability as well in it, because things, as you said, can come up emotionally with being, especially with all the things that are currently happening. So I suppose that's something to be aware of, isn't it? In our own aloneness, just as you say. But I think it's very powerful, and that just sense of how individually we're processing this, and hopefully, as WB8 said, we can soul claps its hands and louder. Soul claps its hands and sings and louder sings for every tattered in its mortal dress. That from it there is a sense, which you said there, of belonging in ourselves. From it, that we can embrace coming home to ourselves from it. So each one of us is alone in the world. It takes great courage to meet the full force of your aloneness. Most of the activity in society is subconsciously designed to quell the voice crying in the wilderness within you. The mystic Thomas A. Kempis said that when you go out into the world, you return having lost some of yourself. Until you learn to inhabit your aloneness, the lonely distraction and noise of society will seduce you into false belonging, with which will only become empty and weary. When you face your aloneness, something begins to happen. Gradually, the sense of bleakness changes into a sense of true belonging. This is a slow and open-ended transition, but it is utterly vital in order to come into rhythm with your own individuality. In a sense, this is your own individuality. In a sense, it is not narcissistic, for as long as you rest in the house of your own heart, doors and windows begin to open outwards to the world. No longer on the run from your aloneness, your connections with others become real and creative. You no longer need to covertly scrape affirmation from others or from projects outside yourself. This is slow work. It takes years to bring your mind home.
Thank you, Hugh.
Thank you, Maura, and thank you for listening. Thank you.